And joining us now with more on the latest developments in Gaza and the region is Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus, Senior Fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Jonathan, always a pleasure to have you with us.
Shalom, thanks for having me.
So, Jonathan, there seem to be two very different realities. On the one hand, you have this peace plan, the rhetoric of peace, and the strong desire on the part of Israel and the United States for a lasting peace. But on the other hand, you have the reality on the ground that paints a very different picture, one that sees Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran all rearming and gearing for another round. So at what point will Israel and the United States have to face the reality on the ground?
Yeah, you're right. There's definitely parallel realities here, but I would offer a little bit of a different interpretation. I'm not entirely sure that Israel is looking for peace at this stage, because realistically, as long as we are surrounded by the groups and leaderships that we are surrounded by, I don't think that really peace is a realistic thing to be looking for, but first and foremost, victory, security, and perhaps then move on to positive things like the expansion of the Abraham Accords. But, you know, as long as Hamas exists in Gaza, as long as Hezbollah exists in Lebanon, I don't think it would be really realistic and serious to speak about peace, but to contain the enemy and perhaps to defeat the enemy and deter the enemy from fighting. Now, when it comes to what the US and Israel will do, the thing is that there is a lot of very heavy presidential investment in the process in Gaza, and I'm not entirely sure that reality will be reflected back to Washington, D.C., and my current concern is that there are a lot of Hamas supporters that are interfering with President Trump's plan. The Turkish and the Qatari and the Egyptians are very active, proactive, and what they're basically doing, they're trying to dilute President Trump's plan from the very clear and correct plan that it was formulated, and as it was accepted and adopted by the Security Council. What they're trying to do now is to dilute it and actually have Hamas retain capabilities and stay in power without being disarmed. And that is a very dangerous path to go down, and I hope that the president and his team will be able to see through that move and not allow it to happen.
And that's interesting because we are seeing disagreements right now between Israel and the United States over which countries will participate in the international force. There are delays, as we've heard. But at the end of the day, soldiers from Europe or from other Arab countries will not be the ones fighting Hamas. It will ultimately fall on Israel and on the IDF. And it seems that the longer Israel delays, the harder it will be to go back in and to fight Hamas, which is rebuilding. I mean, what is your analysis of this?
I think you're right. The longer it takes, the longer time Hamas will have to reestablish their command and control, their logistics, their weapons manufacturing, and consolidate power in Gaza. Every day that goes by and the International Stabilization Force isn't fielded is a day that is wasted, and it's good for Hamas. And I think that at the end of the day, Israel will have to either threaten to use force or actually use force in order for things to change significantly in the Gaza Strip. And this will be a tremendous diplomatic and military battle here between Israel on one side, Turkey, Qatar, and Egypt on the other side, and then the US in the middle, having to decide which side it will prefer and who will actually get to have the final word about the future in Gaza. I can say one thing pretty clear. I don't think Israel, however heavy the diplomatic pressure will be, can allow a situation to exist whereby Hamas has any say or existence in the future of the Gaza Strip, which is what the other side is trying to create. And I don't think that Israel will be able to tolerate that. And if push comes to shove, a few months down the road, Israel will have to do the heavy lifting, and I hope that we won't have to find ourselves in that situation, but that is definitely a possibility.
And the same goes for Lebanon. You know, Lebanon has so far failed to uphold its part of the agreement and disarm Hezbollah. Whether they simply can't or won't, that's another matter. And so it will also ultimately have to fall on Israel to do this job. But again, Israel can't act or won't act until it gets the green light from President Trump. How likely is that to happen?
I think it's likelier that Israel will operate against Hezbollah in Lebanon than it will operate in any significant size against Hamas in Gaza, because the president and his team really want the Gaza peace plan to succeed. And I think that the pressure on Israel to divert Israel from doing what it needs to do will be very significant. In Lebanon, I think that the US and Israel see things more eye to eye and understand that Hezbollah is a menace for future regional stability. It is a cancerous organization inside Lebanon, and that it would do Lebanon, Syria, and Israel a whole lot of good if Hezbollah is really dismantled. And yes, as you say, I agree, the only country that puts its money where its mouth is in the region is Israel. And when heavy lifting is required, then Israel is there to do that job, which would be very beneficial for the Lebanese state. And I can tell you that behind the scenes, I know that Lebanese officials, government officials, and military officials are asking, pleading, and hoping for Israel to come to the rescue and get rid of Hezbollah's main capabilities, because what we're seeing on the ground is a very worrying picture. We're seeing Hezbollah creep back down to the south. We're seeing the Iranians provide Hezbollah with hundreds of millions of dollars that they don't really have to spend, but they're spending them anyhow. And we're seeing Hezbollah trying to reestablish itself in the Bekaa Valley and in southern Lebanon. So bottom line, I think every day that goes by, we're getting closer to a situation where Israel will be forced to take action, preventive action against Hezbollah. And I think that the US will support it, and the Lebanese, perhaps outwardly, will be critical, but in closed sessions and away from the cameras, they will support it, because they know that that is the only way that they can have peace and stability in their country. That is the way to get rid of Hezbollah.
Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus, thank you so much for your insights and for joining us today.
Thank you.